Donna's Things. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking your time to come and see what's going on, what I'm doing, what I got to talk about. If you are returning, you know me, second time, 20th time, 50th time. Thank you so much. My heart really goes out to you. And of course, I appreciate your time also. So, today I just want to share a little bit about time management. I got some notes here, so if you see me, with my card or you see me looking down, then that's what it is. I know about time management, but sometimes when you're talking, you can forget certain points that you want to make. So, if you are familiar with my channel, you know that I do a lot of sewing. When I say a lot of sewing, it's a lot of sewing. I sew minimum 2 to 3 garments every week, whether it's for me or if I'm making it because I'm going to be giving it away. That's how much sewing I do. And technically, I'm giving myself a pass because I probably make more than that. But when you do that much sewing, when you do any sewing, but when you do that much sewing, time management is very important. And the first thing I have to consider is that I'm not just a me. I have a husband, I have a son that visits, I have a niece and nephews that visit, and so family is important to me. So a lot of times I have to navigate my time around who's here. Of course, my husband's always here, but around who's here, who's visiting, and what we are going to be doing. I am mostly a night sewer. I have always enjoyed sewing at night, and I can sew through the night. I like sewing at night because no phones are ringing. Everybody's pretty much asleep. Nobody needs anything. The house is pretty much shut down, locked down, and I am ready to go because I know that as long as nobody needs me, I can just sew right on through the night because I have in me the ability to just go for a few hours at a time. Of course, I do take short breaks in between, but I am one that can just keep going. So, how do I do it? Once I decide what I am sewing, I make sure my home is taken care of, and then I decide how much time is this particular garment going to take. If I don't manage the time right, it's really no big deal because that's just my own time schedule, mentally that I make for myself. If I go over, and of course if I go under, that's just something that happened. I don't promise people things at a certain time. My answer is normally I'll get it done because there are times I know that I can go for hours at a time. And then there are sometimes things going on in my life or around the house that means I won't be doing any sewing at all. And then sometimes I come in my sewing room and I just really don't feel like sewing. So I plan for that entire length of time. If it's going to be 2 hours, 3 hours, or 4 hours, I make a plan. Now, I don't always know how long it's going to take unless it's something that I've already made. But because I've been sewing a long time, I pretty much can look at the pattern. I always read the guide sheet to see what I'm in for. And I can pretty much tell how much time it's going to take me. If there's lots of top stitching, if there are facings as opposed to me throwing in the bias tape. If it's a collar, is it a round collar, it like a roll collar, a shawl collar they call it, or is it a notch collar? I can pretty much tell how much time it's going to take. And then I calculate the fact that I'm going to be stopping for a couple of breaks in between. Because if you're planning, you might can go 2 hours. Even that's kind of long. But if you're planning to pull an all-nighter, you have to plan for breaks. Now, I don't eat late at night, so I'm not eating all in between breaks, but I'll take a 15-minute break easily just to breathe, just to, exercise my hands, just to stretch a little bit, because you're sitting at your sewing machine in that one position. Your foot is on that pedal, off and on, that pedal, or you're then moving over to get to your serger. So you have to stretch these muscles, and it keeps down any stress, especially when you're sewing something that has a lot of detail and sometimes you can't see it. You're reading the directions, you're looking at it, and you have to see it, and so it takes a little time. So it's already late at night, and then you may be a little bit tired, but if you haven't taken any breaks, then I don't know about anybody else, but my garment can end up being a disaster. But one thing about it, if I am tired, even if I'm trying to meet a deadline, if I am tired, I do know how to get up and go to bed. Now, let me just give you a little side note. I don't sew or don't plan to sew on weekends. The only time I sew, and when I say weekends, I mean Saturdays and Sunday. The only time I sew on those days is if it's the spur of a moment. So I will, it's not a rule that can't be broken or anything. So I will, but in general, I don't ever plan for Saturday and Sunday sewing. I save my weekends for my family, for my friends, for reading, and for my study time. So when I was working, I still sewed a lot, and I still sewed at night, but my long nights would happen on the time frame when I know I don't have to go to work the next day, because I only worked a couple of days a week. So if I'm working Monday, or let's say Tuesday, I'm not going to sew all night Monday night. But if I'm off Wednesday, then yeah, Tuesday nights I can go. But even though now I don't go out to work every day, I still maintain the same schedule Monday through Friday, whatever time frame I set up, and I keep my Saturdays and my Sundays free. This way, I'm taking a break from the sewing. I still have other time to do other things that I want to do in my life. And then there are times that I carve out a more refined schedule. I'll consider what I'm making, same as I do always, but I'll make a decision that I'm only going to give it 1, 2, or 3 hours. I'm not going to worry about trying to finish it, because most of the time I want to finish my garment. I don't like a lot of unfinished products. And once I see it, I love taking that pattern piece and that fabric, and I'm in here, and God and I are just creating all these beautiful pieces of clothing. I just love it, and I love fabric. But I will say to myself, you're not going to finish this garment today. You're just going to give it a few hours, 1 hour, whatever it may be, and and then you just take it from there. So it can be, okay, I'm going to spend 1 to 3 hours, 1 to 2 hours for 3 days and get these garments finished. Usually that's what happens when I'm sewing a collection. My collections are at least 5 pieces each, maybe 4. But when I sew in collection, which is what I do the most of the time, I have at least 4 garments, I'll say, and I don't want to sit up 3 nights in a row making those garments. So I'll say I'm going to sew for about 2 hours today. And so I want to make sure I get the jacket done. So I will carve out specific times. Now, when I look at my specific times, it might be 2 hours during the day, and then I'll give the evening and another hour, or it may be an hour during the day and I'll give the evening 2 hours. So it depends on the garment, it depends on what I feel. But one thing I do, I stick to what I say I'm going to do. I have to stay in control of my time. Time is something that you can't get back. You know, we should be careful how we spend it. We should value time. So I don't want every waking moment of my life to be at my sewing machine, even though when I'm not sewing anything particular, I'm in my room and I'm like, I feel like sewing. What can I go and sew? So when I'm sewing in the daytime, I'm home during the day. The daytime is for errands. The daytime is for house cleaning, some television if I feel like, some cooking if I feel like it. But in between those things, I get sewing done. So I might watch a TV show and I'll sew a little bit, watch some TV. I don't have a television in my sewing room. So during commercials, I'll come back and sew a little bit, if I feel like it. Or if I am, I'll go out. I like to go out in the mornings to run my errands or whatever I want to do. And then I'll come back, breathe a little bit, put a little hour into it. Now, when I sew in the evenings, that's after dinner, because whether my husband cooks or I cook, I always make sure that food is properly handled. I'm not rushing to eat. I am spending some time with him, during that dinner time, most of the time, and so after dinner you get your kitchen all cleaned up. Excuse me, I'm sorry. You get your kitchen cleaned up, the family is going and doing what they want to do, especially if it's football season, basketball season. I know my husband is going to be in front of that television for hours, and so of course while he's off doing his thing, of course I'm off doing mine. I do so at least 3 days out of the 5 days a week. I used to sew 5 days. I have just cut it back. Now, if I want to, I will. But I have cut it back because I had to start taking a mental note. I didn't want to get burned out and don't want to sew anymore. I don't want to be stressed out because my brain just is not putting these pieces together right and I'm messing up what I'm doing. So at least 3 days. And just like I said, how many garments I make, I'll say the same thing for at least the 3 days. I'm giving myself a pass because there are times it ends up being 4 or 5 days. But I have made it my business to slow it down, especially when I'm sewing garments that are challenging to me. Now, I'm a pretty fast sewer, so it doesn't take me forever on a lot of things. So let me just kind of share with you. Now, the shirt I have on today, it's just a shirt, but it's this pattern. It's this Butterick 6842. Well, there's a front, there's a back. The collar is the facing. It has darts, which I do put in the front and the back, but I cheat a little bit. I don't use the armhole facing. I put the binding. Of course, I do have the buttonholes, sew on the buttons, and I have the shirt tail hem. But this has turned into one of my favorite patterns. So I know that I could do just what I did. Went to Walmart. This is one of those 1 yard wrappings that you can get from Walmart. I had to buy two because I need, they're not very wide. And I come home and I make the garment. I can wear it. I can have it made within an hour or so, including serging my seams and everything. So that might be a spur of the moment. I feel like sewing something. Let me go to Walmart, get one of those little bundles of their cotton fabric and sew up the thing. Now that could be Monday, Sunday, Saturday, whatever I feel like it. But then there are times like this Know Me 2043. Now, I'm in the process of sewing these now. Even though I have made plenty of pants, there are facings because of the buttons that are there. There are welt pockets in the back. There are pockets in the front. It's a lot going on with this pattern. So this is not I'm going to be finished in an hour. This is a pattern that I have to plan for because it's all going to happen in one day, spread out through the day. Or this might be the one that I say, I'm just going to sew for 1 hour or 2 hours on this particular project. Same thing with this one here. This Vogue pattern, 1966. Now, this jacket, I've already sewn it, but it's top stitched everywhere. There's a front, there's a side front, there's a back, there's a side back. There's a yoke in the front, there's a yoke in the back. You have the sleeves, you have pockets on the top, you have the tab that's here, you have a collar, and every seam is top stitched. The sleeve seam is top stitched. Well, I knew when I looked at the pattern, when I pulled out the guide sheet to see how they make it, I already knew that this was going to be hours of sewing, especially if you want to, do it right. So you have your reading your guide sheet, you cutting out your pattern pieces that you're going to use. Then of course you're cutting out your fabric after you have washed it and dried it, if that's what you do. Then you're cutting out your fabric, and then of course you're taking your time to get it done. And then let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 buttonholes. So this right here, I made this jacket. I'll be showing it soon. It came out really, really nice, but I sewed on it maybe a little bit for about 3 days, and it did take me about 5 hours to get the whole thing done. And I used the linen, which I was glad, because sometimes you choose a fabric that's finicky and that takes up more time. But the linen, no problem. It did just what it was supposed to do, and I sewed it up. But I don't like to see unfinished things, so I hang it on my closet door or it's on my mannequin while I'm working on it. I do work on more than one thing at a time. I might be finishing 3 things in the same day. So I do sew like that. But the way that I sew is very important to me. If you've seen my videos, I've shown some things where you can see my work. So it is important to me that the pressing is done, the seams are finished off real nice and all of that. I love doing handwork, so to get the handwork done, all of those things in sewing. Time management is very important. Not everybody's household runs the same. So you have to decide what works in your house. You have to decide what is important, to you, or what things you should do first, where your priorities lay. But whatever you decide, stick to it. Don't be all over the place. have a plan. Now, if you're the type of person that your stuff is spread out everywhere, that's fine. If you can see what you're doing and that's the way you work, that's fine. If you're the type that's organized, like to keep your stuff organized and everything, then that's fine too. All of that is part of time management. I clean as I go. After I get my pieces cut out, I fold up all the fabric, the pattern pieces. I fold them, I crease them, get it all put away. I pick up threads, I wipe off my cutting board. I do all of that. But that's me, because if all of this stuff is around me, I can't work. That's time consuming. You're cutting and cleaning. You're sewing and cleaning. I clean as I go. I try to be messy sometimes on purpose, but I clean as I go. So, that also just takes up a lot of time. So you have to decide what works for you when you are sewing, but managing that time is very important. And don't set goals that you can't make. Just because I sew 4 hours at a time doesn't mean that's something you want to do. You might be this type of person that can sew 2 hours and you're ready to put it down. You may be the type of person, like some of us do, we run into a hiccup, we go ahead, put it down, breathe a moment, even for a day, and then you go back to it. Or you may be the type of person that can just go 5, 6, 7 hours until the garments are done. So you have to do it according to what works for you. Just whatever it is, manage your time, because while sewing is beautiful, while I love doing it, you can get burnt out. Your brain is working, you are physically working, you're standing, you're sitting, you're cutting. It's a lot going on when you're sewing. So however you do it, just be careful, be mindful that you should manage your time and leave some time for yourself. Gotta have those breathing moments, gotta have those stretching moments. So I just wanted to share that with you. It had been asked of me more than once, and so I just decided to share. I thank you so much for watching. As always, I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the content or like what you heard, hit that like button, share my channel, and then of course, subscribing is something that I do look at the numbers. I do, like to see it going on. But if you just like to scroll through every now and then, let me go see what Donna's things are doing. Either way, I appreciate one just as much as I do the other. Only thing I always ask is that you ring that bell so that you can be notified every time I upload a video. Thank you for your time. I know this was time consuming. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye.